Hey there. Tonight we begin a journey into the heart of the Sahara, a place where silence feels deliberate, as though the desert itself has chosen to conceal something far older than its dunes. I stand with sand curling around my ankles like the grip of an unseen hand, and the thought that gnaws at me is simple, but relentless. This land remembers more than it shows. The Sahara does not feel merely empty, it feels erased, as though once it pulsed with a rhythm that someone, or something, forced into silence. Across its endless expanse, dunes rise like frozen waves, hiding a past so complete in its vanishing that even ruins seem absent. Nomads whisper of rivers that once cut silver through the sand, of forests dense with life, of cities where no trace remains today. Science concedes there was water here, vast lakes and fertile plains, yet it hesitates when asked the next question. Who lived in that Eden, and why did they leave nothing behind? Civilizations, no matter how forgotten, usually leave fragments, shards, bones, broken walls. But the Sahara is unnaturally clean, like a page scrubbed of ink. That is where the unease begins, because what if this wasn't nature alone? What if it was not time that buried them, but intention? The first time I studied a satellite image of the Sahara, it wasn't with a scientist's detachment, but with the memory of someone who has walked its edges and listened to its silence. Shapes revealed themselves beneath the sand, not random, not natural, but deliberate. Vast lines too straight for rivers, circles too perfect for chance, shadows that speak of structures swallowed whole. They looked less like remnants of erosion, and more like scars, and every scar suggests a wound. The air itself carries unease. On still nights when the wind ceases and stars blaze unbroken, the desert hums faintly, a vibration that presses against the chest. Some say it is the earth remembering, others whisper it is the earth warning. And then comes the question I cannot shake. If this desert once cradled life, why was it silenced so thoroughly? Nature does not erase with such precision. Nature leaves decay, rubble, fragments. But here the silence is absolute, as though an unseen hand wanted not merely to end, but to obliterate. I ask myself, how much of our history is truth, and how much is simply what we have been permitted to remember? Civilizations rise and fall, but they always echo. Yet here, in the Sahara, the echoes are gone. It is not the silence of age, it is the silence of censorship, a silence too vast to be human. The question that coils tighter with each step I take across these sands is not only who lived here, but who ended them, and why. If the Sahara once held a civilization greater than any we now recall, then it did not vanish, it was silenced. And silencing on this scale is never without reason. I walk deeper into the dunes, each step swallowed by shifting grains, knowing I am trespassing in a place where memory itself has been forbidden. Something was here, and it was taken. The only question that matters now is who took it, and tonight I will take you into that silence. But the only question that matters now is who took it. The words repeat in my mind as though the desert itself had whispered them back to me. Each step across the shifting dunes feels like moving deeper into a silence that is not natural, but constructed, as if every grain of sand has been placed here with purpose, concealing a truth too heavy for daylight. Whoever took it did not merely destroy, they erased. And erasure, I've learned, is always more terrifying than destruction. Destruction leaves traces, broken temples, fallen walls, fragments of pottery half buried in dust. But erasure leaves nothing. The Sahara is not a wasteland of decay but a monument of absence, sculpted to ensure questions would outlive answers. I pause at the crest of a dune, the horizon trembling in the heat, and I imagine the people who might have lived here. What knowledge did they hold that made them dangerous enough to erase? What secrets in their civilization called down fire from the sky? Among the nomads, there are whispers of strange stones found beneath the dunes, stones melted into glass as if licked by a fire hotter than the sun. Those who carried them away did so in fear, hiding them in caves, guarding them like forbidden relics. The desert is not empty, the elders say, it is sealed. But sealed by whom, and for what reason? Science offers its cautious explanations: climate shifts, slow desiccation, savannas drying into barren sand. And yes, that story holds truth, but not the whole of it. Even the most guarded geologists admit anomalies: craters without meteor fragments, pockets of radiation too strong, too localized, to be explained by natural decay. Patterns in the dunes that mimic geometry, spirals and grids no wind could shape. When I trace them on a map, they align like the bones of a skeleton long buried, a city too immense to be chance. The possibility tightens in my chest like a secret I should not be carrying. What if the Sahara is not a desert born of time, but a scar left by war? Not erosion, but execution. Not forgotten ruins, but a battlefield where one side lost so completely that history itself refused to speak their name again. Standing under the punishing sun, I close my eyes and try to envision this place not as it is, but as it was. I imagine rivers flashing with silver across the sand, forests swaying where only dust now dances, terraces of stone cities climbing toward the sky, towers that pierce the heavens like the spines of titans, monuments so vast they might rival our modern world. A people who had mastered not only stone and water, but perhaps even perception itself, the ability to read the heavens in ways we have yet to rediscover. And perhaps that was their undoing. Perhaps they were noticed. It unsettles me most, not that they vanished, but that they have been hidden so carefully. Why are they absent from our myths? Why no fragments in scripture, no consistent traces in folklore? Even civilizations far smaller left behind songs and laments, fragments of their grief pressed into the soil of memory. Yet here, nothing. A void so precise it feels sculpted. Could it be that their erasure reached even into thought, that their memory was burned away from the minds of those who might have remembered them, and yet the earth betrays secrecy? Beneath the Sahara's shifting skin, satellite eyes catch glimpses, outlines too deliberate, circles intersecting like labyrinths, roads carved straight as if by design. Not illusions, not tricks of the light. Ghosts of cities buried so deep even the desert struggles to keep them hidden. The past resists. It leaks through the silence, daring to be seen. Sometimes I wonder if those who erased them still watch this land, guarding the secret even now. The Sahara feels like forbidden ground, and every night I spend here brings the same sensation. I am trespassing on someone else's silence. And the question that gnaws at me is no longer only who took it, but whether they are finished. The desert holds that question like a secret it refuses to answer, and yet every shifting dune seems to whisper back, unfinished. I walk farther into the silence, my footprints are erased almost instantly by the wind, and I cannot shake the sensation of being watched. The Sahara is vast, yes, but vastness alone does not explain this weight, this pressure on the mind that grows heavier the deeper you wander. If they were not finished, then what became of their work? Did the act of erasure succeed so completely that nothing remains but sand, or are fragments still out there? Fragments meant to be hidden, but hidden imperfectly? Local herders tell stories in hushed tones, claiming that when storms tear away the skin of the desert, shapes sometimes appear for mere hours. Pillars half buried, stones carved with symbols that vanish again by dawn. Those who see them do not linger. They turn their backs quickly, whispering prayers, as if the desert itself disapproves of the intrusion. Science will not speak of such tales, but even the cautious cannot deny anomalies. In certain places compasses refuse to settle, spinning wildly as if caught between poles. Instruments falter, batteries drain faster than they should, and shadows appear where no object stands. To those who live here, these are not malfunctions, they are warnings. And then comes the thought that chills more than heat ever could. What if these disturbances are not echoes of the past, but signs of something still active? What if the erasure was never absolute, never final? Perhaps the silence of the Sahara is maintained, not just once, but continuously. Perhaps the desert is not a graveyard, but a sealed chamber, guarded across millennia by forces that never left. This is where unease hardens into fear, because if they are not finished, then we are not alone. Our footsteps across this land may already be counted, our questions weighed against the silence. It makes me wonder whether discovery itself is a trigger, whether every attempt to unveil the Sahara's secrets awakens something that prefers we look away. At night, under the sweep of the Milky Way, the sensation grows stronger. I lie in the sand, staring upward, and the stars seem impossibly close, sharp and unblinking. Did the lost people once lie beneath this same sky? Did they trace Orion and the Pleiades, naming constellations as we do? Or did they see something more, a pattern we no longer recognize, perhaps even visitors who walked among those stars? The more I think of it, the more suffocating the silence becomes. Civilizations leave behind laments, songs carved into stone, myths etched into memory, fragments of a culture's last breath. But here, nothing. Not even rumour survived cleanly. That absence gnaws like a missing tooth in the jaw of history. The silence itself is too perfect, too engineered, and that perfection is the loudest evidence of all. Yet fragments slip through. Satellite scans reveal faint geometric shadows beneath the dunes, long corridors buried in the sand, arcs and spirals spanning miles. Their scale mocks coincidence. To imagine them is to imagine a civilization greater than any in our memory, one capable of shaping Earth itself into vast living patterns. The thought both inspires and terrifies, because if they were so advanced, what enemy could annihilate them utterly? Sometimes I think of the shards of glass found across stretches of the desert, the so-called Libyan desert glass. Mainstream explanations point to meteor impacts, yet no fragments of meteors remain. The glass is smooth, clean, fused at temperatures we could scarcely reproduce without modern industry. It suggests not accident but intention. The desert in those regions feels scarred not by nature but by precision, and scars imply violence. The deeper I wander, the more I feel the Sahara is not history but warning. If silence was imposed here once, it can be imposed again, and if their erasure is not finished, then perhaps ours has not yet begun. The thought echoes inside me with the weight of prophecy. It feels less like speculation, and more like a verdict waiting to fall. I move deeper into the desert, the sky wide and merciless above, and each step seems to tighten the bond between myself and the silence surrounding me. The Sahara is not just absence, it is a presence, vast and deliberate. The first revelation comes not from the sky, but from the ground itself. In regions few dare to cross, the desert hides fields of glass, sheets so wide they stretch beyond the horizon, smooth as though fire itself had poured over the earth. Scientists struggle to explain them. Some claim ancient meteors struck here, but no fragments remain, no evidence of collision, no craters consistent with such devastation. The glass lies flat, as if fused all at once by heat beyond anything the earth should generate. When I stand upon it, my reflection stares back distorted, as if I am walking across the memory of fire. It feels less like accident and more like execution. I run my fingers across the cooled surface, and a chilling thought takes root. What kind of weapon leaves nothing but silence? Our own machines could scar the land, but not so cleanly. Destruction usually leaves fragments, rubble, ash, bodies. But this is sterilization, a strike so absolute it removed not only structures but meaning itself. If the Sahara once held a civilization, then this glass is not remnant but testimony. Testimony of an erasure that was not natural but surgical. The more I imagine it, the darker the truth becomes. This was not battle, it was annihilation. A one-sided event where resistance was impossible. If such a force descended once, who commanded it? And what fear drove them to silence an entire world? At night, the wind dies, and I hear it again. That low vibration in the ribs, steady and natural. Locals say it is the desert breathing, or remembering. I begin to think it is neither. It is warning. A whisper that what happened once is not finished, that silence is still being enforced. I stare at the horizon and picture the lost people in their last moments. Perhaps they looked up at the same stars I see now, believing themselves safe beneath their constellations, until light descended with precision they could not comprehend. Perhaps they had reached too far, built something, discovered something that drew attention from beyond, and when they were noticed, they were not answered, they were removed. That possibility corrodes every certainty I carry about history. We think of civilizations as rising and falling by natural cycles, drought, famine, war. But what if some did not fall? What if they were silenced deliberately, struck out of existence by hands not of this earth? The Sahara may not be unique. It may only be the most complete erasure, a silence so absolute it frightens us precisely because it leaves no trace to study, only questions. The desert night stretches endless, and I lie awake feeling the weight of the shard of glass I carry in memory. If weapons could fuse valleys into mirrors, then they were not only powerful but merciless, and the merciless never act without reason. The question shifts from who destroyed them to what were they trying to prevent from surviving. That thought pierces deeper than the silence itself. Perhaps the lost civilization was not erased for what they had done, but for what they might have unleashed. And if that is true, then the desert is not only a grave, it is a prison. I close my eyes, hearing the hum rise faintly beneath the sand, and wonder whether the walls of that prison are strong enough to hold. The sound lingers in my chest long after the air falls still, a vibration deeper than hearing, more like memory pressing against bone. I rise and look across the dunes, and the silence of the Sahara seems heavier now, as if the desert itself has overheard my doubt. What if the prison is not holding? What if every storm that strips sand away, every shifting dune that reveals fragments of stone, is less accident and more leakage, a slow exhale from something that cannot stay buried forever? The thought settles on me like the weight of the heat itself. Erasure may not have been victory, only containment. I walk until the moon lifts above the horizon, silver and merciless, casting shadows across dunes shaped like frozen waves. That is when I see it. A curve too smooth to be natural, half buried in sand. My pulse quickens. I kneel, brush away grains, and my fingers meet stone, cold against the desert's warmth. Not rough, but polished, carved. Lines etched into its surface in patterns that seem both geometric and alive, flowing into spirals that bend at impossible angles. The first major revelation tightens its grip. The Sahara does not only conceal the scars of destruction, it conceals the bones of a civilization deliberately hidden, its architecture buried but not erased completely. These are not ruins toppled by time, they are fragments pressed down, sealed as though by hands determined to deny even memory. The carvings are unlike anything I have seen. Not hieroglyphs, not cuneiform, but something else. Shapes that seem to fold inward, like thoughts trapped in stone. As I trace them, an unease spreads through me. They are not decoration. They are communication, though in a language meant less for the eyes than for the mind. My breath quickens, and for a moment, I feel as if the stone is not ancient but awake. I stagger back, the night air sharp in my lungs, and the silence closes in tighter. Why would a people carve such designs, unless they understood something we do not? And why would anyone fear them enough to obliterate their world so completely? The answer presses closer with every beat of my heart. Knowledge. They had reached something forbidden, and the punishment for reaching too far was erasure. The implications claw at me. If this was not a civilization destroyed by climate, But once silenced for its discoveries, then our histories are not simply incomplete. They are censored. How much of what we call progress is only rediscovery of truths once buried in fear? And how much further can we go before the same silence descends on us? The stone seems to pulse faintly in the moonlight, its spirals catching light in ways that feel unnatural. I wrap my fingers around it, half expecting warmth, but it is colder than ice, as though it carries not memory but warning. In that moment, the desert wind rises suddenly, tearing across the dunes in violent gusts. Sand lashes against my skin, stinging like shards of glass, and the world around me vanishes into a storm. I shield my face and clutch the stone tighter, struggling to breathe as the air fills with grit. The storm feels too sudden, too precise, as though the desert itself resents my discovery, or worse, as though something unseen has noticed I have touched what should remain hidden. When at last the storm begins to die, the dunes are altered, reshaped, as if the desert has rewritten itself. The polished stone in my hand is the only proof I was not dreaming. I clutch it to my chest, heart pounding, and realise the silence here is not passive, it is guarded. And the question burns in me like fire. If the walls of their prison are weakening, what is it that still stirs beneath? The desert gives no answer, only silence. But it is the kind of silence that feels crowded, as though something unseen listens from beneath the sand. I clutch the carved stone tighter, its cold weight steady against my palm, and I wonder whether I've crossed a threshold that was never meant to be crossed. The wind has died, but the air remains charged, humming faintly with static as though the storm left behind an echo that lingers in my bones. I kneel in the shifting dunes, pressing the stone against my chest, and I realise it does not feel like a relic. It feels like a key. And keys only exist when there are doors. The more I stare at its spirals, the more they seem to shift under the moonlight. Not visibly, not like an illusion of sight, but as though meaning itself bends when I try to follow them. A shiver runs through me, not fear, not yet, but recognition. This was not art. This was language. A language not meant for mouths or ears, but for thought itself. Whoever carved these shapes spoke in geometry, inscribing consciousness into stone. And by touching it, I may have opened myself to their voice. The desert responds with unease. Shadows stretch unnaturally long across the dunes, and the stars above seem sharper, closer, as though the sky itself is leaning in to watch. I feel exposed, as though my discovery has sent a ripple outward, and I am no longer alone. The Sahara feels awake. I think of the people who carved this. Did they know what they were unlocking? Did they believe they could hold it? Or were they simply desperate, grasping for power or truth that outgrew them? The glass fields, the silence, the deliberate absence, all point to the same truth. Whatever stirred here once was too dangerous to leave free. And perhaps the desert is not their tomb, but their cage. The psychological weight tightens around me. If the stone is key, then perhaps carrying it is not choice but compulsion. I try to loosen my grip, to drop it into the sand, but my hand refuses. The thought terrifies me. Am I holding the artifact, or is it holding me? The silence deepens, so heavy it feels like pressure against my ears. I strain to listen, and beneath the emptiness I hear it again. That hum, low and steady, vibrating through the ground. But this time it does not feel distant. It feels near, directly, beneath me, as though something vast stirs far under the dunes. I stumble back, heart pounding, my breath ragged. The stone pulses faintly in my palm, its spirals shimmering like embers. A single thought claws at my mind, insistent and unshakable. It knows I am here. For the first time since I began this journey, I feel fear not as curiosity, but as survival. The desert is no longer indifferent. It is aware. I lift my gaze to the horizon, and in the distance lights flicker faintly. Not stars, not fire. They move across the dunes with deliberate rhythm, appearing and vanishing like eyes opening in the dark. My chest tightens. Are they mirages born of exhaustion, or watchers responding to the signal of the stone? I press the artifact closer, trembling, and the hum beneath my feet grows sharper, louder, as though the ground itself is answering. The Sahara is not silent, it is speaking, and the voice it carries is not only memory but warning. The moment the words form in my mind, the desert feels heavier, as though it resents my recognition. The flickering lights on the horizon do not vanish. They pulse, faint and deliberate, shifting across the dunes in arcs that seem purposeful, not random. I freeze, heart hammering. This is not a mirage. The desert is answering. The stone in my hand grows colder, its spirals shimmering faintly in the starlight. For an instant I swear I feel a vibration in my bones that does not belong to me, as if the artifact itself is pulsing with the rhythm of the lights. They are in communication. I am caught between two signals, one from the ground, one from the sky, and I realise with a sinking certainty, I have made myself visible. The air grows still, unnaturally still, and in that stillness my thoughts no longer feel entirely my own. Memories slip to the surface unbidden. Not my memories, but impressions. A city of vast towers stretching like stone spears toward the heavens. Rivers alive with silver currents. Faces staring upward at a sky thick with burning shapes. Then a flash. White fire descending, silence sweeping across all sound, and the memory collapses into ash. I stagger, gasping, clutching the stone tighter, terrified that I am not imagining these visions but receiving them. The warning becomes clear. The Sahara is not only prison, it is witness. It remembers what happened here, and it carries that memory like a scar that cannot fully close. Each fragment I glimpse is not story, but testimony, and the more I see, the less certain I am that I can survive knowing. I try to force myself back into calm, to analyse as I once did, but reason feels fragile in this place. Why does the desert reveal itself now? Why to me? Perhaps the act of carrying the artifact has branded me, marking me as intruder or inheritor. Perhaps the prison walls are not weakening by accident, but because I have been made key without consent. The psychological weight digs deeper. If these visions are true, then the civilization that once thrived here reached heights beyond our own, and their silence was enforced not by time but by intervention. By something greater, something unwilling to let them continue. And the question gnaws harder. Is that something still here, guarding the cage, ensuring that silence endures? I look again at the flickering lights. They're closer now, gliding across the dunes with unnerving grace, like lanterns carried by unseen hands. Each movement feels intelligent, watchful. My first instinct is to flee, but where would I go? The desert stretches endless in every direction, and the more I run, the deeper I seem to enter its design. The hum beneath my feet grows sharper, resonating through the stone in my hand until my teeth ache with the vibration. The desert is not merely warning, it is summoning. The silence I once believed empty now feels crowded with attention, as though countless unseen eyes have turned toward me. And the truth presses harder with every heartbeat. Silence is not absence. Silence is control. I close my eyes, gripping the artifact until my knuckles burn, and a thought pierces me like ice. What if I was never meant to uncover this? What if the desert did not conceal itself by chance, but chose who could and could not approach its secrets? And what if I have crossed into a threshold from which there is no return? The lights draw nearer, steady and deliberate. The hum swells until the sand trembles beneath my feet. And in that trembling I understand. The desert does not forget. It waits. The dunes shift around me as though agreeing, their ridges catching the moonlight like waves in a frozen ocean. Waiting implies intention, and intention implies that what stirs beneath this silence is not finished with us. The Sahara is not a relic, it is a living wound. The flickering lights continue their steady approach, weaving across the dunes in patterns too deliberate to dismiss as chance. My breath quickens, though the air feels thinner, as if the desert itself is pressing against my lungs. Each light moves with a rhythm, aligning into arcs and circles that remind me of the spirals etched on the stone. I feel suddenly as though I am inside the very language carved into its surface, a message unfolding not in words, but in movement. My grip tightens on the artifact, and the hum beneath my feet grows sharper. The vibration climbs into my bones, up my spine, pressing against the back of my skull until thought itself feels invaded. Images flash across my vision, towers piercing the sky, rivers shimmering with metallic sheen, colossal halls lined with carvings glowing faintly in blue light. Faces turn toward me, not human, not alien, but something in between, their eyes reflecting starlight as though the heavens lived inside them. Then comes the collapse. Fire spreads across those towers, turning stone to molten glass. Screams echo through the vision, but they cut off too quickly, swallowed by silence. The halls crumble, the rivers dry, and the faces vanish into dust. I fall to my knees, gasping, unable to tell whether I am witnessing history or being forced to remember what was deliberately removed. The psychological weight is crushing. If these visions are true, then the Sahara's silence is not only memory but punishment. Something greater than this lost civilization judged them and enforced a sentence so absolute that only scars remain. And if that judgment lingers still, then by holding the stone I've placed myself within their verdict. The lights pause in the distance, circling as if in consultation. They do not scatter, nor do they approach closer. They wait as the desert waits, as though weighing me against the silence. My fear sharpens into clarity. I am being measured. The prison walls are not weakening by chance. They are testing whether to open or to remain sealed. A realization twists inside me, more unsettling than the visions. The Sahara is not forgotten land. It is chosen land. A place deliberately scarred to hold something that cannot be allowed elsewhere. Its silence is not emptiness, but containment, and its watchers ensure the silence remains unbroken. And now, with this artifact, I may have broken it. The hum surges again, louder, vibrating through the dunes so fiercely that sand cascades like water down their slopes. My teeth ache, my skull pulses with the rhythm, and the lights above shift into a new formation, a spiral stretching outward, a mirror of the carving I hold. It is no longer warning, it is acknowledgement. I realize with dawning dread that the Sahara is not speaking to me, it is answering me. The moment I touched the stone, I entered into its dialogue, and silence is no longer an option. What was buried does not want to remain forgotten. It wants to be remembered. Or perhaps it wants to be released. I close my eyes, trembling, and the visions press harder, showing fragments too quick to grasp. Corridors lined with impossible symbols, skies filled with machines like burning stars, and beneath it all, the endless hum. When I tear my eyes open again, the lights on the horizon are gone, leaving only the trembling of the sand and the weight of the artifact in my hand. But I know now the desert has chosen me to hear its memory, and memory never waits forever. The thought hammers in my chest like a second heartbeat. I cannot pretend I stumbled here by accident anymore. The Sahara, in its vast silence, has reached for me. It has given me visions, warnings, and perhaps even a role I never asked to play. The night air cools, but sweat clings to my skin, a reminder of the storm still moving inside me. I stare down at the artifact, its spirals catching the dim starlight. They look almost alive now, flowing like liquid carved into stone. If memory is speaking, then this is its tongue. And by holding it, I cannot remain a spectator. I have become a participant in a story older than the desert itself. I walk, though I do not choose the direction. My steps seem guided by something deeper, a pull beneath the sand. The hum grows softer, not gone but hidden, waiting to swell again when I am ready to hear more. The dunes shift endlessly, yet I feel I am being led, drawn toward a place where silence is weakest. Hours pass, or perhaps only moments. Time feels fractured here, as though the desert bends it just as it bends memory. Eventually I reach a hollow between the dunes where the wind has carved the sand away to reveal something unmistakable. A wall of stone, half buried, stretching farther than my eyes can follow. Its surface is marked with the same spirals as the artifact, vast and precise, etched so deeply the desert's erosion could not erase them. This is no ruin. It is an entrance. I fall to my knees before it, awe flooding me. The scale is overwhelming, a structure not built to be seen from above, but to endure beneath. The spirals pulse faintly, almost in rhythm with my breathing, and I feel the stone in my hand resonate against it like two notes of the same chord. The truth is undeniable. The artifact is a fragment of this wall, a shard of a greater whole, and I have brought it back to where it belongs. The psychological weight crushes me. If this is a prison, then I am standing at its gate. The carvings no longer look like symbols, but like locks, designed not to keep intruders out, but to keep something in. And the desert in all its silence has led me here. I press the artifact against the wall, and the hum swells immediately, rising from beneath the dunes like a tide. The spirals flare faintly with light, blue and cold, illuminating the hollow in a glow that should be impossible in this darkness. I stumble back, terrified, as the wall itself seems to breathe. Sand slides from its surface, revealing more lines, more spirals, glowing with the same unearthly pulse. A realization claws at me. Memory is not passive. Memory is alive, and what lives beneath this desert has not forgotten. The visions return, sharper, relentless. I see a council of beings with eyes like burning suns, arguing over the fate of the city I glimpsed before. I hear their voices, not words, but intent, as they decide not to conquer, but to erase, to silence, to bury. And in that choice, they left behind a lock that now stirs because I, unwitting, have touched its key. The hum deepens, vibrating the air so intensely it feels like thunder rolling beneath the earth. My knees buckle, and I drop the artifact. Yet even separated from it, the resonance continues. The wall has awakened. The desert is no longer waiting. It is remembering out loud. The words feel like thunder in my skull as the wall before me pulses with light. It spirals, burning brighter with each second. Sand cascades away in sheets, revealing an expanse of stone so vast it dwarfs me. I stumble backward, overwhelmed by the sense that I have woken something not meant to be woken. The hum now roars through the hollow, a soundless vibration that presses against my ribs and shakes the air around me. The artifact I dropped lies in the sand, glowing faintly, its spirals aligned with those on the wall. They are no longer fragments of history. They are living circuits, designed to connect across time, and now they are awake. Visions tear through me again, unstoppable, each sharper than the last. I see the lost city in full, towers of white stone rising like mountains, streets wide as rivers, temples crowned with spires that pierce the heavens. But more than structures, I see the people, tall, luminous, their eyes reflecting light like mirrors. They walk with purpose, their gestures deliberate, their lives woven into a design far beyond survival. Yet above them, shadows gather. Not storms, not clouds, but shapes in the sky that shimmer like burning glass. I feel the terror of the people below as the heavens split open, spilling fire that strikes with surgical precision. Towers collapse into ash, rivers turn to steam, and through it all a single intent reverberates. Silence them. Not punish, not conquer. Erase. The vision snaps, leaving me gasping in the hollow, my hands clawing at the sand. I know then with dreadful clarity that this desert was not shaped by nature's hand. It was shaped by judgment. The Sahara is not a desert born of time, but a monument to obliteration. The psychological weight crushes harder now. If their silence was enforced once, who enforced it? The beings in my visions are not human. Their precision, their cold determination, feels alien. They did not destroy for conquest, but for control, as though the civilization here had breached a boundary forbidden to mortal hands. And the question that follows chills me more than the night air. What boundary have we already crossed in our own age? The wall trembles, its spirals blazing brighter, and for the first time I hear not only vibration but sound, a low resonant tone that echoes like a voice. It is not language I know, but I feel it as intent. Remember. The desert is not merely holding silence, it is forcing remembrance, pressing memory back into those who dare to listen. And yet another truth rises, darker still. The prison is not unbroken. If this wall can awaken at my touch, then the silence imposed here is vulnerable. What was once sealed may yet return. I stagger to my feet, staring at the spirals, and the realization twists deeper. The wall is not only a gate, it is a warning. Whoever sealed this place did not erase it completely. They left behind locks, patterns, guardians of silence, not to hide it forever, but to delay it, to hold it until the world was ready or foolish enough to open it again. And I fear I've already begun to turn that key. The hum builds until my vision blurs, and the wall itself seems to move, its carvings shifting like water. The sand beneath me quakes, dunes collapsing in slow waves, and the horizon trembles as though something vast stirs beneath. The Sahara does not remember alone. It is remembering through me, and in that moment, one thought pierces sharper than all the rest. This is not history resurfacing. It is judgment returning. The realization coils inside me like venom, each breath tighter than the last. Judgment is not passive. Judgment acts. If the Sahara is remembering through me, then I am no longer observer but instrument. The glow of the wall pulses slower now, steady as a heartbeat, and in that rhythm I feel myself aligning, my pulse echoing its cadence. It is as though the desert is weaving me into its memory, pulling me into a role chosen long before I was born. I wonder, trembling, if this is why I came here at all. Not curiosity, not research, but summons. The psychological weight deepens. To carry knowledge is one thing, to become its vessel is another. I did not choose this silence, yet it threads itself into my mind, burning fragments of vision I cannot unsee. Every image sharpens my dread. The luminous beings whose eyes carried starlight, their desperation, their destruction. But beneath that grief, another fear grows stronger, not only of what they were, but of why they were ended, because the more I see, the clearer it becomes that their silence was not arbitrary. It was deliberate. They had touched something too vast, too dangerous, and those who came from the skies judged them unworthy to keep it. The erasure was not rage, it was law, and what terrifies me most is the growing sense that the same law still stands. I press my hands to my face, trembling. If memory is law, then by opening it I've broken a boundary. What if my presence here has marked me not only as witness, but as offender? I think of civilizations across our world that vanished without explanation, entire cultures swallowed by absence. What if they too stumbled on truths forbidden to be carried forward? The desert answers with silence, but silence that now feels like surveillance. My thoughts no longer feel private. The weight in the air presses like a gaze, heavy, unyielding. I whisper aloud, my voice raw. Why me? But the question dies in the hollow, smothered by the hum that still resonates through the wall. The artifact glows faintly where it lies in the sand, its spirals pulsing in rhythm with the walls. I cannot bring myself to pick it up again, and yet my mind aches in its absence, as though part of me has already fused with it. That is the most unsettling truth. I do not know if I am still myself. Fear twists into guilt. What if by awakening this memory I have doomed not only myself but others? Memory does not remain contained, it spreads. And if the Sahara is not only prison but signal, then perhaps the very act of listening has sent a call across the stars, a call to those who silenced this place once before. The thought makes my chest tighten. If they judged one civilization unworthy, what will they think of ours? Have we surpassed the boundary? Or have we merely repeated the same mistake, too blind to see it? The wind stirs suddenly, whispering across the dunes like voices. I lift my head, and in the shifting sand I think I see shapes. Outlines of figures, tall and unmoving, etched only in dust. They vanish as quickly as they form, leaving me gasping, my pulse thundering. The desert does not need language to answer. It shows me enough to know I am not alone in this hollow. The wall's glow deepens once more, and the hum swells until the dunes tremble. I realise with certainty that judgment is not past, it is present, and the silence I carry is not only their memory, it may soon become ours. The words claw at me as I try to breathe, but the air itself feels heavy, thick with unseen weight. For the first time since arriving in this hollow, I realise my greatest fear is no longer what lies beneath the sand. It is what may already be inside me. The silence is not external. It has begun to weave itself through my thoughts. When I close my eyes, I cannot tell which visions are mine and which belong to the desert. Faces flicker behind my eyelids, not strangers now, but familiar, as though I have walked among them before. I hear their voices not in language but in intent, a chorus of memory pressing against my mind. Each whisper carries sorrow, but also accusation. It feels as though they are not asking to be remembered, but demanding it. The psychological struggle sharpens. Am I the bearer of their memory or its prisoner? The more I resist, the tighter it binds. I try to tell myself this is imagination, the exhaustion of a body stretched too far, but the desert does not permit such lies. The wall still glows. It spirals alive with that cold blue light, and the artifact pulses faintly where it lies in the sand. Together they form a rhythm, a signal, and I am caught inside it. The thought pierces me. What if this silence was never meant to be lifted by a single person? What if the weight of such memory is too much for one mind to carry? Perhaps that is why civilizations vanish, not because they are erased entirely, but because one person cannot hold the burden of what should belong to all. I stumble to my feet, trembling, my voice cracking as I whisper to the empty night, "This isn't mine. This was never mine." But the desert does not release me. Instead, the visions surge stronger, pulling me deeper into their truth. I see a council once more, luminous beings standing before a vast chamber where spirals glow across every wall. Their eyes turn skyward as something descends. Vessels of fire, shapes vast enough to blot out the stars. Their fear is not of destruction, but of judgment, as though they knew the verdict long before it arrived. And when the sky splits open, I feel their despair as though it is my own. Their silence is not simply absence, it is a scar of guilt pressed into time. I collapse, clutching my head, certain my thoughts are no longer separate from theirs. And in that collapse comes another realization. The desert is not only forcing me to remember them, it is making me become them. Their memory is not passing into me, it is replacing me. The psychological terror deepens. What if the Sahara does not need ruins or relics? What if its prison is built inside those who dare to listen? If I surrender, even for a moment, I may no longer be myself. I may be them, speaking through me, continuing their silence by wearing my body like another mask. I press my hands into the sand, grounding myself, but even the ground vibrates with their hum, unrelenting. There is no escape from this inheritance. The wall glows brighter, the spirals twisting as though alive, and the artifact pulses in answer. I realise with a shiver that cuts to the bone that the desert is not giving me choice, it is giving me transformation. And as the hum swells again, drowning out even my heartbeat, I ask the question I fear most. If I am no longer myself, who will I become? The air around me quivers as though the desert has already answered, but in a language I cannot resist. The wall pulses with cold light. The artifact trembles in the sand, and I feel the boundaries of my identity fray like parchment under flame. I clutch my head, trying to anchor myself in memory. My name, my past, the path that led me here. But each thought is slippery, dissolving as quickly as it forms. In its place rise images I have never lived, standing on terraces of stone, gazing into skies filled with vessels that burn like suns, hearing voices chant beneath towers that no longer exist. The memories are not mine, yet they are more vivid than the ones I have carried all my life. The psychological fracture deepens. I cannot tell if I am being given their story, or if I am being erased to make room for it. Perhaps the two are the same. To inherit their silence is to surrender myself. But surrender to whom? To the luminous beings who built this city, or to the greater force that judged them unworthy? I stumble back from the glowing wall, desperate for distance, but the sand beneath me vibrates with the same rhythm. There is no escaping the hum. It follows like a pulse from the earth itself, threading through bone, reordering thought. I try to shout to break the rhythm with sound, but even my voice is swallowed instantly, devoured by silence. In the haze of fear, a darker realization cuts through. Perhaps the desert does not want me to resist. Perhaps resistance is meaningless. The Sahara has chosen me not to question, but to carry, to become the vessel through which its silence continues. The prison may never have been meant to hold its inhabitants. Perhaps it was always meant to hold its witness. The thought tears at my sanity. If I am consumed, what will remain of me? Or does it matter? History is written not by survival, but by memory. And if I carry their silence, then my own existence may dissolve into theirs. I will not be remembered. I will only be repetition. And yet, in that despair, another question emerges sharp as a blade. What if this is not punishment, but inheritance? What if the desert is not stripping me of identity, but offering one? To carry the silence is to become its guardian, to ensure judgment endures, that those who cross forbidden thresholds are reminded of its law. Could it be that this is not erasure, but transformation into something beyond human? I tremble, torn between terror and awe. The wall's glow deepens, and the artifact hums louder, as though responding to the conflict within me. The desert does not demand clarity. It demands surrender. The visions surge once more, and this time they show not destruction but aftermath. A barren landscape stretching endless, towers reduced to dust, skies emptied of vessels. And in the middle of that silence stands a single figure, cloaked in shadow, watching over the ruins. Not ruler, not victim, witness, the guardian of silence. My breath falters. The figure turns, and for a heartbeat its face is mine. I collapse to my knees, sand swallowing my hands, my chest tightening under the weight of revelation. I am not separate from this memory. I am being shaped into it. And as the hum intensifies once more, one thought claws through the chaos. Perhaps I was never meant to leave this desert. Perhaps I was meant to remain as its next silence. The thought sits in me like a stone dropped into dark water, sending rings through everything I remember of myself. I test my own name in a whisper and hear it come back thinner, the hollow swallowing its edges as if the desert is sanding it down. The wall glows with a patient pulse, and the artifact on the sand answers like a distant echo returning home. I am no longer sure where the desert ends and I begin. I try to anchor myself with small human gestures. I press my palm against my chest. I count breaths. I dig my fingers into the sand until grit bites under my nails. The ground vibrates anyway, a low tremor that travels through bone, turning each heartbeat into a borrowed drum. The more I insist on being singular, the more the place asks me to be plural. Memory here is not a book to read. It is a tide to drown in. I tell myself I could walk away. If I leave now, the dunes will close behind me, the wall will dim, and this will recede like a fever dream. But another voice, not mine and yet wearing my cadence, rises from the hush. If you leave, the silence leaves with you. It is not a threat. It is a fact spoken with the weariness of a sentence already carried too long. The carvings draw my eye again. Their spirals no longer seem to lie flat. They tilt inward, depth nested inside depth, as if the stone contains corridors that narrow until they pass through thought itself. I feel a pull to place my hand upon the wall, to let the pattern read me as I try to read it. I resist, but only barely. I am not certain. My reasons are caution. Perhaps they are cowardice. Or perhaps they are the last scraps of a self refusing to be drafted into a history that devours its tellers. I think of those who lived here. Not their greatness, not their towers. Their ordinary moments under a sun that did not yet burn with judgment. Someone teaching a child to carry water. Someone harvesting at dusk. Someone turning a face toward the first evening star and finding peace in it. The visions have shown me endings, but endings only wound because lives were once gentle. I do not want to become their silence if I cannot also carry their tenderness. To be witness should mean more than repeating the verdict. The hum deepens. The sand around the artifact shifts by itself, lifting in faint spirals as if a breath moves just beneath the surface. I feel a pressure at the base of my skull, an invitation or a command. The difference is a luxury I no longer possess. My thoughts stray to the impossible judgment that carved this desert. Not rage, not conquest, but refusal, as if the sky itself declared, "Not this." Refusal leaves cleaner scars than anger. That is why the Sahara is immaculate. A slow clarity gathers. There are two paths, seal and serve, or open and risk. To seal is to accept the law I did not write, to carry the hush forward and become another link in a chain of guardians who leave no names behind. To open is to call down what erased them, perhaps the very hands that still circle this place in patient orbit, and gamble that what rises will not unmake more than it restores. One path ends in obedience without memorial, the other ends in memory without mercy. I do not know which is right. I only know that I am already chosen by both. The wind returns without warning, a hush that is more movement than sound. Sand lifts and falls in veils, revealing a patch of ground dark and smooth, where a dune had been minutes before. I step closer. It is glass. A black mirror under starlight, cold enough to ache through the soles of my feet. The wall's glow slides across it in pale rivers, and for a heartbeat I see my reflection overlaid with another face, older than history, younger than terror. The lines do not match, but the eyes do. I jerk back, breath broken. Something changes in the air. The hum takes on shape, almost a cadence, almost a phrase. The artifact flares as if answering a summons from below, and the glass underfoot carries the vibration outward like a bell, struck in a cathedral of sand. Far away, beyond the reach of the wall's light, the horizon ripples as though a thought passes under it. I know the moment before I see it. The desert gathers itself, the night tightens, and my skin prickles with that animal certainty we pretend we outgrew. I lift my head, heart locked to the rhythm rising from the ground, and the hollow around me becomes a stage cleared of every distraction. And then, in the middle of the empty field, I see the lights. They do not flicker like fire, nor do they drift like stars. They move with purpose, aligning themselves into a pattern that chills me with its precision. Circles form and dissolve, arcs bend into spirals, and the glow expands until the hollow is drenched in pale radiance. The lights are not approaching. They are arranging themselves as though building a message in the sky for me alone. The hum from the wall deepens, syncing with the rhythm of the lights. The artifact on the sand quivers, its spirals glowing with a feverish pulse. My chest tightens as I realise I'm inside a dialogue not meant for human ears. This is no mere vision, no memory forced upon me. This is present. This is happening now. The lights shift again, and with them my perception unravels. The dunes seem to dissolve, replaced by streets of stone lit from within, towers shimmering in crystalline light. I hear voices, not audible but insistent, layered, countless, rising like a choir without language. They do not speak words, they speak intention, judgment, continuity, silence. I clutch my head, unable to bear the pressure, but the more I resist, the sharper the images become. I stumble backward and find myself not on sand but on glass, a surface so smooth it reflects the lights above like water. My reflection stares back, but its eyes glow faintly, unearthly, no longer mine alone. I stagger, horrified, because the line between me and them is collapsing. The desert is no longer giving me glimpses, it is drawing me in. Fear rises like a storm. If this is communication, then I have already answered by standing here, by touching the stone, by allowing their memory inside. What if the act of witnessing is itself consent? My presence may have been all the permission they required. The prison walls may not be breaking by force, I may be opening them willingly. The lights intensify, their pattern converging into a single point above me. A beam of cold radiance descends, illuminating the artifact where it lies in the sand. It trembles violently, it spirals, flaring until they blind me. The sound grows unbearable, not hum, not tone, but something larger, like the roar of a world awakening. In the chaos, a thought pierces through, not mine, but clear. We are not gone. We are waiting. My breath catches. These are not only memories of a civilization destroyed, they are signals of a presence that endures. Erased, yes. Buried, yes. But not extinguished. The Sahara has not been grave. It has been chamber, cocoon, suspension. What was sealed has lingered in silence, and now the silence is thinning. The psychological terror twists deeper. If they are not gone, then what stirs beneath me? Are they the victims longing to return, or the judges ensuring silence spreads? Have I aligned myself with the silenced or with their executioners? The lights give no answer. They only intensify, filling the horizon, burning patterns into my eyes that I know I will never unsee. I fall to my knees, trembling, clutching the sand as if earth itself could anchor me. The beam narrows, descending upon the artifact, and in that instant the ground beneath it splits. A fissure spreads, glowing from within, as though the desert itself has been hollow all along. I hear the grinding of stone, the shudder of earth, and I know the prison walls are no longer only remembering, they are opening. The wind surges violent and hot, carrying with it a sound like countless voices exhaling at once. The lights above spiral faster, mirroring the crack widening in the ground, and I realise with terror and awe that I am no longer witness to history. I am standing at the threshold of its return. The words linger inside me like a pulse I cannot shake. The fissure before me glows faintly, not with fire but with a cold luminescence that feels older than time. The dunes around it tremble as though something vast breathes beneath, yet the desert sky remains unnervingly calm, stars gazing indifferently at the wound in the earth. The storm of lights above has stilled, though not vanished. They hover in deliberate silence, as though watching, waiting to see whether I will step forward or retreat. I want to move, to run, but my body resists. Fear roots me, yet it is not only fear, it is curiosity. The fissure radiates a presence that feels almost sentient, a beckoning I cannot fully deny. The ground settles into uneasy stillness, and with it comes a lull that is somehow more unsettling than the chaos. Every sound feels exaggerated. The rasp of my breath, the faint shifting of sand, the low murmur rising from the crack. It is not a roar, not even a hum now. It is a whisper, like countless voices speaking just beyond hearing. I crouch closer, holding my breath, and the words, if they are words, vanish the moment I strain to catch them. The silence is deliberate, teasing, as though the desert wants me to imagine what I cannot confirm. I touch the edge of the fissure. The stone is cold, too cold for desert night, and it vibrates faintly against my fingertips. Not randomly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat buried deep below. My chest aches with recognition. This rhythm is not foreign. It matches the pulse that has been threading through me since I first touched the artifact. The realization gnaws at me. Whatever stirs below is not separate from me. I have been carrying its resonance all along, as though chosen to mirror it. The desert may not be revealing itself because of my intrusion. It may be revealing itself because I already belong to it. The psychological unease sharpens into dread. If this is a prison, then am I its warden or its key? The lines blur in the stillness. The glowing spirals carved into the wall no longer feel like warnings, they feel like instructions, and I fear I've already begun to follow them without knowing. The crack widens slightly with a low groan, spilling more of that pale light across the sand. Shapes shimmer faintly within, it, not solid, not entirely visible, but enough to suggest movement. Shadows twisting, retreating, returning. I lean forward despite myself, and for an instant I see what looks like an eye. Vast, lidless, reflecting starlight from beneath the ground. My body jerks back, heart pounding, yet the fissure closes slightly as if mocking my retreat. The desert silence deepens again, pressing like a weight against my skull. I realise that nothing here is sudden. The storm, the visions, the hum, the fissure, all of it has been orchestrated, timed with precision. The stillness now is no accident. It is pause, a waiting, a test. The psychological toll grows unbearable. I no longer trust the edges of my thoughts. My memories blur with those not my own. My fears mingle with voices that may never have belonged to me. Perhaps this is what judgment feels like. Not punishment, but the slow dissolving of certainty, until you no longer know where you end and the silence begins. I close my eyes, clutching my knees to my chest, and the desert seems to lean closer, pressing its cold breath against my ear. The whisper returns, no longer wordless, carrying one intent I cannot ignore. Prepare. My body trembles. The lights above remain fixed in silent orbit. The wall still pulses, and the fissure waits with patient hunger. I do not know what I am preparing for. Release, surrender, transformation. But in the pit of my chest, one truth rises like ice. The desert has no intention of letting me go. The thought seals itself inside me, heavy and undeniable. I feel the Sahara's silence tighten, not as emptiness, but as grip. A slow, closing fist that ensures retreat is no longer possible. I try to imagine the path back through the dunes, the long march under stars, but my body does not move. The weight of the fissure holds me as firmly as chains. The air grows colder, unnaturally so for the desert night. My breath fogs in the moonlight, and each exhale seems to linger longer than it should, as though the air itself does not want to release me. I wrap my arms around myself, shivering, though the cold is not entirely of the body. It coils deeper, a chill of recognition, as though the desert is reminding me that I belong to it now. The wall still glows faintly, its spirals pulsing like the steady beat of an ancient heart. The artifact on the ground trembles in answer, the two locked in a dialogue too vast for me to follow. I kneel closer, watching the patterns shift with hypnotic rhythm. They do not repeat. Each spiral grows into another, folding into forms that seem to reach toward meaning, as if the wall is not decoration but language being spoken in real time. I strain to decipher, and for a moment I think I see words form, not in my tongue, but in thought itself. Not sound, not symbol, but intent. The fissure breathes. There is no other word for it. Sand shifts inward with each inhale, outward with each exhale, the rhythm slow, immense, undeniable. The light within it pulses gently, casting shadows that stretch too far, bending across the dunes in directions that should be impossible. I cannot decide if the presence below is sleeping or waking. Either truth terrifies me. The psychological burden thickens. I am no longer afraid of dying here. I'm afraid of dissolving here, of vanishing into silence until no trace of myself remains. The desert does not need my body. It wants my memory, my voice, my identity folded into its endless hush. Perhaps that is how the silence is maintained, not by erasing civilizations in one stroke, but by weaving their fragments into new vessels until individuality is consumed. I press my palms to my face, forcing myself to recall the sound of my own laughter, the faces of those I left behind, the fragile tether of a world beyond these dunes. But the images come faint, thin, already fading against the desert's demand. I whisper names, but the wind swallows them whole, returning nothing. The lights above stir again, faint arcs across the sky, as though adjusting to some signal from below. Their glow reflects in the fissure, deepening its luminescence. I feel watched, measured, judged not for my past, but for my capacity to surrender. The Sahara is patient. It does not rush. It knows the outcome is inevitable. And yet, in that suffocating certainty, a spark of resistance stirs. If the desert intends to make me silence, perhaps my only defiance is to speak, to carry its memory outward, to let the world hear what should remain buried. But even that thought is poisoned by doubt. What if speaking is not resistance but fulfillment? What if I am meant to spread the silence by cloaking it in words? The fissure shudders, widening just slightly, and the whisper rises again, no longer faint but sharp, threading directly into my mind. Stay. The command is simple, irresistible. My knees buckle as if pushed, and I collapse onto the sand. The cold spreads through me, not from air but from within, as if the silence has finally found the opening it needs. I clutch at the ground, desperate to hold on to some fragment of myself, but the desert leans closer, patient and relentless. Its grip is not force, it is inevitability. And in that inevitability, one question carves itself into me with unbearable weight. What if the silence is not prison at all, but destiny? The desert seems to answer, not with words, but with pressure. The weight of the dunes bending down as if to press me into the role it has already chosen. I try to breathe, but even the air feels rationed, offered only in fragments, as though I must earn each breath by surrendering more of myself. The fissure glows faintly, steady now, like an eye half opened. Its pale light flickers across the sand, illuminating the wall behind me where spirals still pulse in rhythm. Artifact, wall, fissure, lights above, all connected, all aligned, all waiting. I am the anomaly. The desert does not ask whether I belong. It insists. I force my gaze upward toward the stars, desperate for perspective beyond this hollow. But even the sky betrays me. The constellations I knew are fractured, rearranged by the shifting glow of the lights above. They move too subtly to notice at first, yet when I trace them, I see arcs where none should be, shapes twisting into patterns I cannot name. The heavens themselves are part of this design. There is nowhere untouched by its silence. Psychological fatigue presses harder than fear. My thoughts scatter, frayed between past and present, between memory and intrusion. I recall the first whispers of nomads, their warnings about rivers of glass and buried cities. How much of their caution was folklore, and how much was instinct born of carrying silence too close? Perhaps they knew more than they dared say. Perhaps the desert speaks to them too, but in softer tones, sparing them what it reserves for me. I kneel again beside the fissure, my body trembling, though I no longer know if the shaking is mine or the earth's. The whisper returns, not sound but intent. Stay. Remember. Continue. The words drill into me with the certainty of law, and I wonder whether this is how judgment felt for the lost civilization. Not fire first, not destruction, but command. A command so absolute that to resist was unthinkable. Yet still a fragment of me resists. I think of silence as cage, not crown, of memory as wound, not inheritance. If destiny here means dissolving into something not myself, then is it destiny or theft? The line blurs the longer I remain, but the question itself keeps me tethered. Perhaps resistance is no more than asking. The fissure widens slightly, spilling more of its pale light into the hollow. I lean forward despite myself, unable to resist the draw. For a moment I see shapes inside, not clear, not solid, but moving. Figures perhaps, or echoes of them, shifting in the glow like shadows stretched thin. My chest tightens with the certainty that they are watching, waiting to see if I will yield. The artifact trembles violently, its spirals blazing until they nearly blind me. The wall answers, its glow intensifying in waves. The hum returns, louder, fuller, surrounding me from all directions. It no longer feels like sound, but like atmosphere, as though I am submerged in a vast ocean of vibration. The desert is no longer content to whisper. It is declaring itself. I press my palms into the sand, clinging to the ground as though it can anchor me, but the vibrations rise through my hands, threading into bone, into thought. I feel my pulse sinking with the hum, my identity eroding into rhythm. I bite my lip, tasting blood, desperate to hold on to pain as proof of self. The silence cannot erase what bleeds. Yet even that conviction falters as the desert presses harder, relentless, inevitable. And then, within the roar, another truth surfaces, a thought not mine yet carved into me with clarity. The silence is not end. It is passage. My body goes cold, every nerve alive with dread. If silence is passage, then to yield is not to vanish, but to become bridge. A bridge between what was erased and what is to come. And if that is true, then I am no longer standing before a prison. I am standing before a door. The words taste like betrayal in my mouth, because a door implies choice, and yet I feel none. The fissure glows brighter, the wall hums in rising waves, and the artifact pulses as though eager for my answer. But there is no decision here. The desert has already chosen. The thought crushes me. If this is a door, then something waits on the other side. Not memory, not silence, presence. And presence does not wait forever. I lean closer, compelled by forces I cannot resist, and the fissure deepens with a groan like the earth itself sighing. Pale light spills upward, washing over me until shadows vanish. For the first time since entering this hollow, I feel as though the desert is no longer hiding, it is revealing. Visions strike me again, but sharper now, no longer fragments. I see the lost city not at its end, but in its fullness. Towers gleaming in sun, markets alive with the voices, rivers carrying boats of silver hulls. The people move with purpose, their bodies graceful, their faces luminous with knowledge. They are not ghosts, they are alive, thriving, vibrant. And yet even in their joy, shadows hang above them. Vast vessels in the sky, watching, waiting. The people lift their eyes, unafraid, as if they believe the watchers are kin. But I feel what they do not. The watchers are measuring, calculating. The vision shifts violently. Fire cascades from the heavens, carving the city into glass. Towers collapse. Voices vanish. Yet amid the destruction, I see something I had not before. Survivors, not many, but enough. They do not flee into wilderness. They move downward, into spiralling tunnels carved deep beneath their city. They carry artifacts like the one I hold. Their faces alight not with despair, but with grim determination. They are not dying. They are hiding. My chest tightens as the truth pierces me. The silence was not only imposed, it was also chosen. The lost civilization did not vanish completely. They buried themselves, locking away not just their world, but their knowledge, their presence, their essence. The Sahara was not only scar, it was design, a camouflage for survival. The fissure's glow intensifies, and the whisper in my mind grows sharper. We remain. The psychological weight bends me low. All this time I believed the desert was grave, then prison, then judgment. But now the lines blur again. It may be all three at once, but also sanctuary. The people did not surrender. They retreated, sealing themselves in silence until the world was ready, or desperate enough to open them, and I, standing here with their artifact, may have become the one to break the seal. The lights above shift again, aligning into spirals that mirror the fissure. The message is clear. I am at the threshold of their return. But return is not triumph. Return is consequence. If they emerge, will they come as kin, or as judges themselves? I stagger backward, terrified. Yet the fissure pulls at me like a tide. My breath hitches, my heart races, but in the marrow of my bones I feel the inevitability of it. This door was never meant to remain closed forever. It was meant to wait. And the silence has chosen me as the hinge. The desert hums louder. The fissure trembles wider, and I feel the weight of countless eyes upon me, not from above, not from imagination, but from below. Something waits in that light, ancient and unyielding, patient across ages. And as the sand shakes beneath my feet, the truth burns through me like fire. We were never the first to find this place, and we were never the first to vanish. The words strike me like an echo already rehearsed, a script repeated across centuries. The silence I thought unique to me is suddenly crowded, layered with countless others who must have stood where I stand now, trembling at the same threshold, believing themselves chosen or cursed. The desert has staged this encounter before, and it will stage it again. The thought sickens me. My fear of being consumed shifts into something darker, the realization that I may only be a fragment in a long sequence of seekers. Every one of them must have felt singular, convinced that their footsteps broke the silence for the first time. But the Sahara, I now see, is mercilessly patient. It lures, it waits, it devours, and it repeats. The fissure's glow steadies, as though listening to my realization. The wall behind me hums, its spirals vibrating like strings on an unseen instrument. The artifact trembles, not violently now, but almost gently, as though reassuring me that what's happening is not chaos but design. I shiver because design implies purpose, and if I am part of that purpose, then the cycle is not accident, but architecture. Visions rise again, unbidden. I see not one city but many, scattered across the earth, each vibrant, each cut down before its time. Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, civilization swallowed by drought, by flood, by disappearance too sudden to be natural. But in the Sahara, the truth sharpens. Not all were destroyed completely. Some descended, retreating into silence, leaving behind watchers to ensure their return would be delayed until the right threshold was crossed. The psychological blow is crushing. What if history is less a straight line than a spiral, civilizations rising and falling in endless repetition? What if each time humanity reaches too far, silence descends, pruning it back to ignorance? And what if I, by standing here, have brought us to the next pruning? The air thickens, and for a moment I feel as though I am no longer alone. Shadows form at the edges of the fissure. Tall, indistinct figures, their outlines wavering in the pale glow. They do not move. Closer, yet I feel their scrutiny pierce me. Watchers, survivors, remnants of those who retreated into the deep. Their silence is heavier than words, pressing into me with the weight of judgment. I try to speak, to demand why they wait, why they repeat this cruel cycle, but my throat locks. No sound escapes. It is as though my right to question has already been stripped away. Instead, their intent pushes into me. You are part of the cycle now. The desert shifts, sand sliding from the fissure's edge, widening it further. The light deepens, spilling outward in slow waves that make the dunes shimmer like water. I step back instinctively, but the ground trembles beneath me, resisting retreat. I understand then. There is no leaving. Not now. Perhaps not ever. The psychological collapse edges closer. I wonder how many before me reached this same point, their thoughts unspooling into despair, their identities fraying until only the silence remained. Did they vanish into the dunes? Did they join the watchers below? Or did they carry the silence outward, spreading it into the world above until history itself buckled under its weight? The artifact pulses harder, and for a heartbeat I see not the hollow but a city alive again, streets filled, voices rising. But the vision fractures, replaced by ash and glass. The cycle is merciless, and my role in it becomes clearer. I am not meant to stop it. I am meant to continue it. The fissure shudders once more, and a whisper as cold as stone presses into me. It begins again, and with those words I know with crushing certainty that my presence here is not discovery, it is repetition. The admission sears through me, heavier than fear itself. Discovery once felt like triumph, but repetition feels like entrapment. If countless others have stood here before me, trembling at the threshold, then my thoughts are not mine. My terror is not unique. My role is scripted. The fissure glows brighter, its light pulsing in deliberate rhythm, and I feel myself caught between cycles. The watchers remain at its edge, their tall forms still indistinct, yet their silence grows sharper, like a knife pressed closer to the skin. I cannot see their faces, yet I feel their intent. Accept your place. I step back, desperate to resist, but the ground betrays me. The sand shifts beneath my feet, sliding me closer to the fissure, as though gravity itself bends toward it. The hum rises again, surrounding me, entering me, until my own heartbeat falls into its rhythm. There is no escape. There never was. A thought claws into my mind, bitter and undeniable. If silence is a cycle, then my resistance has already failed. Every refusal I make has already been made before. Every fear I feel has already been felt. And in the end, each of them must have yielded. That is why the watchers remain. That is why the desert still waits. The cycle demands continuation, and I am simply its latest echo. Psychological collapse presses closer. My memories blur again, not only mine, but fragments of others who came before. I see men in desert robes kneeling by the fissure centuries ago, their eyes hollow with awe and despair. I see explorers in rough uniforms, notebooks trembling in their hands as they tried to sketch the spirals before the silence took them. I see faces I cannot name, from times I cannot place, each swallowed by the same inevitability. They are all here with me, their fragments grafted into mine. The artifact pulses in the sand, and I bend to lift it, though the decision is not mine. The moment my hand closes around it, the wall ignites in full radiance, its spirals blazing with unbearable light. The fissure widens, spilling illumination across the dunes until the night itself seems erased. I collapse under the brilliance, my body racked with tremors, my mind drowned in the roar of intent. Continue. And in that roar I understand the horror. The Sahara was never meant to remain forgotten. Its silence was not final. It was pause, delay, a breath between cycles, and I am not chosen to break the silence but to extend it. I am not ending the cycle. I am becoming part of it. I scream, though no sound leaves my throat. My voice is already stolen, swallowed into the hum. The watchers lean closer, their shadows lengthening, though their forms never resolve. They do not need faces. They are function. They are continuity. And soon I will be too. But in the crushing inevitability, another realization cuts through. If I am repetition, then so will the next be, and the next after that. Which means the silence is not absolute. It fractures with every cycle, leaving echoes, fragments, questions. Perhaps that is why the desert cannot erase completely. Perhaps memory always leaks, no matter how tightly sealed. I cling to that thought, fragile as it is. If I must become silence, then let my silence carry the faintest trace of defiance, enough for the next seeker to feel, enough for the next to know they are not alone in their terror. Even repetition may leave cracks. The fissure trembles, widening further, the hum shaking the desert like thunder beneath the skin of the earth. The lights above spiral again, their arcs sharper, faster, aligning with the glow below. The cycle is accelerating. I am no longer at its threshold. I am inside it. And with that final surge of dread, I realise the desert has no need for discovery. It only needs continuity. The thought lands like a verdict I cannot appeal. Continuity means I am not unique. Continuity means I am replaceable. The silence does not require me. It merely requires someone. And in that realisation, I feel the last fragile threads of individuality strain against the pull of inevitability. The fissure glows brighter, spilling waves of pale light across the dunes, and the watchers shift closer. Their forms remain indistinct, little more than shadows woven from radiance, but their presence presses into me like weight. They are not hostile, yet they are not merciful. They are necessary, embodiments of a cycle that transcends pity. I tremble under their scrutiny, and the desert hums louder, vibrating the very air until breathing feels like inhaling thunder. The artifact in my hand sears with cold fire, its spirals blazing so fiercely that they etch themselves into my vision. The wall behind me echoes its glow, and together they form a resonance that feels like alignment. I am being drawn into pattern, folded into geometry older than stars. My pulse no longer feels like mine, it is theirs. Visions burst open again, unrelenting. I see civilizations across the ages, each reaching too far, each swallowed by silence. Their cities collapse into deserts, jungles, oceans, but always with the same mark, a hum beneath the earth, watchers above, a chosen vessel trembling at the threshold. I see their faces, wide-eyed, horrified, illuminated by the same glow that now burns through me. They scream, they pray, they resist, but in the end they yield. Not because they wanted to, but because continuity demanded it. The psychological weight is unbearable. I feel myself dissolving, my thoughts blurring with theirs until I can no longer separate past from present. Were those visions mine, or were they memories forced upon me by those who came before? I whisper my own name, desperate to anchor myself, but it slips from my lips like dust. The silence swallows it greedily, leaving nothing behind. And then the whisper returns, cold and unyielding. You are not the first. You are not the last. The words pierce like knives. They strip away any illusion of choice. I am function, not self. A cog turning in a machine older than history. Yet within that despair, a small defiance flickers. If continuity is inevitable, perhaps I can alter its shape. Perhaps the silence cannot prevent me from leaving behind fragments, echoes, questions that will haunt the next vessel. Maybe continuity is not perfect. Maybe it always leaks. The fissure widens suddenly, sand collapsing inward as though devoured. The glow intensifies, casting the hollow in stark brilliance. The watchers lean forward, and for the first time their outlines sharpen. They are tall, impossibly so, their limbs elongated, their faces hidden in shadow. Their eyes, if they are eyes, gleam with starlight. Cold, unblinking, infinite. My body convulses under their gaze, every instinct screaming to flee, yet my legs will not move. I am rooted, absorbed into their judgment. The hum crescendos, splitting into layered tones that twist together like chords. It is not random. It is language, a chorus speaking intent. And though the sound is not human, I understand it. Continue. Remember. Carry. I bow under the weight, my forehead pressing into the cold sand. Tears burn down my face, though I do not know if they are mine or borrowed from those who came before. I am not individual. I am vessel. But even as silence closes in tighter, I cling to a single thought, desperate and defiant. If continuity is inevitable, then perhaps rebellion is simply refusing to vanish completely. The fissure pulses again, the glow surging outward like a wave. My vision blurs, my breath fractures, and I know with bone-deep certainty the cycle does not ask for consent, it demands surrender. The words ring in me like iron, leaving no space for denial. My body trembles under their weight, my chest hollowed out by the certainty that I am caught in a machine far larger than choice. Yet somewhere beneath that terror, a stubborn ember burns. If surrender is demanded, then defiance is survival, even if only in fragments. The fissure's glow spreads wider, flooding the hollow with cold radiance. The watchers remain poised at its edge, their silhouettes sharpened now, impossibly tall, their forms bending in ways my mind struggles to anchor. They are patient, endless, shaped by silence itself. Their gaze pierces me not as individuals, but as continuity embodied. In their presence, I feel stripped bare, reduced to function. I am no longer myself. I am process. The hum intensifies, splitting into tones layered so densely they feel physical, pressing into my ribs, vibrating through marrow. It is unbearable, yet hypnotic, a lullaby and a sentence bound together. And in its rhythm, images rise once more. Cities of stone, fields of glass, seas boiling away under fire from the skies. Always the same cycle, rise, reach, silence. Humanity ascends, humanity forgets, and silence reclaims. Psychological exhaustion presses close to madness. My mind begins to fracture into echoes of others who stood here before me. I hear their voices trembling, whispering prayers into the sand. I feel their despair, their surrender, their fleeting resistance swallowed by inevitability. I am them, and they are me. Continuity has already begun. And yet, my ember holds. If all of this is repetition, then why do I feel their fragments still? Why do their echoes remain, whispering through my mind, haunting the silence? If the cycle were perfect, would they not be gone completely? The floor gnaws at me. Silence never fully erases. Something always slips through. Memory always leaks. That is why I can feel them. That is why I can see. I clutch the artifact to my chest. It spirals burning cold against my skin. It is not only a key to silence, it is also a crack in it, a flaw left by those who came before, perhaps deliberately, perhaps by necessity. If continuity is inevitable, perhaps the only way to resist is to amplify the flaw, to carry the leak further, to let memory slip louder into the world above. The fissure quakes, spilling shards of light as the hum crescendos. The watchers lean closer, their starlit eyes unblinking, and their command lashes into me with brutal clarity. Yield. My knees buckle, my hands press into the sand, and I feel myself slipping, dissolving, surrendering into rhythm. My voice is gone. My name dissolves, but the ember inside me sparks harder against the tide. I do not know if defiance matters. I do not know if rebellion can exist within continuity. But I cling to it all the same. Perhaps every vessel before me carried the same ember, and perhaps that is why the cycle has cracks. Perhaps continuity is not absolute. Perhaps silence fears what leaks. The desert shakes, dunes collapsing inward, the fissure yawning wider as if preparing to swallow me whole. The hum deepens into something beyond sound, a presence that fills not only air, but thought. My vision blurs, my body convulses, and yet I clutch the artifact tighter, whispering into the storm though no sound leaves my throat. I will not vanish completely. The watchers do not move, but their silence thickens, pressing like stone. The command remains unbroken, yet beneath it, faint and trembling, I hear another voice. Not theirs, not mine, but born of all who came before. We are still here, and in that faint whisper, I realise continuity is not only theirs, it can be ours. The words ignite in me like a spark catching dry grass, fragile but alive. For so long the silence has pressed as verdict, as sentence, as law carved into stone. But now, for the first time, I feel it as possibility. If continuity is a cycle, then perhaps it can be bent, reshaped, turned against those who wield it. The fissure glows brighter, its pale light pulsing in steady waves, and the watchers lean closer. Their starlit eyes widen as if they sense the shift inside me, the ember burning hotter. I feel their command pressing sharper, insistent. Yield. But beneath it, the whisper grows, faint yet defiant. We remain. The artifact pulses in my hand, its spirals shimmering not with submission, but with agitation, like a heartbeat accelerating in defiance of restraint. I clutch it to my chest and feel the rhythm align with mine, not theirs. For the first time, the silence inside me does not hollow. It fills, filled not with their demand, but with fragments of all who came before. Voices, faces, echoes stitched into memory. The desert wanted to erase them into function, but they endure as resonance, and through me they begin to converge. Visions flood sharper than ever. I see the luminous beings descend into the earth, their civilization collapsing above, yet their eyes bright with knowledge that survival lay not in flight, but in waiting. I see the explorers who vanished into dunes, their screams swallowed but their fear etched into stone. I see countless nameless wanderers, priests, seekers, wanderers consumed, yet not erased. They all remain, thin but unbroken, hidden in the fabric of silence itself. And now they converge into me. The psychological weight transforms. What once felt like dissolution now feels like inheritance. The silence still demands surrender, but surrender is no longer only loss. To dissolve may also mean to contain multitudes, to become a vessel not of erasure but of defiance, carried forward. Perhaps that was always the flaw in their design, that by binding so many voices into continuity, they left the possibility of rebellion growing within it. The watchers stir uneasily, their forms rippling as though the light itself resists them. Their command fractures, no longer a seamless roar but a divided chorus, some tones faltering against the rising whisper. They lean closer, but their edges blur, as though the desert itself trembles at what is breaking loose inside me. The fissure quakes violently, sand collapsing into its depths, the pale glow surging upward like a tide. The hum becomes unbearable, filling the sky with vibrations that warp even the stars above. Yet through the chaos, the whisper steadies, rising louder. We are still here. We endure. Tears streak my face, though I don't know if they are mine or theirs. I bow my head, clutching the artifact, and speak, though no voice escapes my lips. Then let us remain together, not as silence, as memory. The wall flares behind me, its spirals blazing brighter than ever, casting long shadows across the hollow. For a moment I see the watchers recoil, their starlit eyes dimming as if the pattern has turned against them. The artifact burns with cold fire in my hands, and I realise it is no longer simply key or lock, it is conduit, and through it the fractured voices gather, weaving into something stronger than command. The desert shakes with fury or fear, I cannot tell which. The fissure widens once more, but the pull feels different now. Not only a demand to surrender, but an invitation to channel. The silence no longer drowns me, it resonates through me. Continuity has not claimed me, I have claimed it, and as the hum reaches its zenith, shaking sand, sky and bone, I understand the truth. I am not only vessel, I am chorus. The realization floods me, staggering in its enormity. Where once I was fractured, a solitary figure dissolving under the weight of silence, now I feel whole in a different way, not as one, but as many. The whispers that haunted me no longer claw for dominance. They harmonise, threading together into something vast, defiant, alive. The fissure trembles violently, widening with a shudder that sends dunes collapsing inward. Light surges upward in streams, pouring into the sky like rivers of pale fire. The watchers reel, their once impenetrable forms flickering at the edges, their starlit eyes dimming. They are still immense, still suffocating in presence, but for the first time they look uncertain. My chorus presses against them, not with words but with resonance, a vibration that shakes even their silence. The artifact burns in my hands, the spirals no longer cold but blazing, alive with the rhythm of countless voices. The wall answers in kind, its carvings glowing with ferocity, each spiral aligning to the pulse I carry. I realise with awe and terror that I am no longer following the desert's design. I am rewriting it. The continuity they demanded has become continuity, I claim. Visions strike sharper, overwhelming in their clarity. I see the cycle, the rise, the fall, the silencing, but now I see what lay hidden beneath it. Fragments of defiance, left behind by every vessel who came before. A whispered word here, a mark etched into stone there, a memory buried in blood and sand. They did not vanish entirely. They seeded resistance into the silence itself, and now those seeds bloom in me. The psychological shift is staggering. Where I once felt dissolution as annihilation, now I feel it as expansion. I am not erased, I am multiplied. The despair of others, their grief, their final breaths, all of it becomes fuel, woven into the chorus that now shakes the desert. My tears fall freely, not of fear but of unbearable weight, of carrying lives that never truly ended but lingered, waiting for a voice strong enough to sing them together. The watchers step closer, their silence pressing harder, but the crack in their authority widens. Their command fractures, once a single roar, now splintering into tones strained and uneven. I feel their fury, but also their fear. They sense the cycle unravelling. The fissure surges, spilling light so bright it turns the desert to a mirror. I fall to my knees, overwhelmed, yet I do not collapse in defeat. I bow as conduit, as channel, as chorus. My body trembles under the resonance, but I do not break. The silence they demanded has turned against them. Continuity no longer serves them alone. The hum crescendos once more, and for an instant the desert becomes cathedral. Walls of sand glowing, sky split into arcs of light. The watchers silhouetted like broken statues. In that instant I see beyond them, into the depths of the fissure itself. And what I see shakes me to marrow. Figures, countless, shimmering in the glow, not dead, not gone, waiting. Entire generations cocooned in silence, bound in stasis beneath the earth, their eyes closed but their presence undeniable. My breath falters. The desert was never only grave, it was preservation. What was silence was not destroyed, but stored. And now, through me, the seal trembles. If it breaks, the chorus will not remain whisper. It will become multitude walking once more upon the earth. The watchers hiss, not with voices but with silence sharpened to a blade. Their command lashes again, yield, contain. But my chorus roars in answer. We endure, we rise. The desert quakes as if split between verdicts, its silence pulled taut, unravelling at the seams, and in that tension I feel the cycle reaching a threshold it has never crossed before. The desert trembles beneath me, as if caught between verdicts, silence fraying at its edges. I kneel in the hollow, the artifact blazing in my hands, the wall alive with spirals that twist like rivers of light. Above, the watchers loom, their command fractured, their authority no longer seamless. For the first time, I sense hesitation in them, as though continuity itself fears what I have become. The chorus inside me swells, no longer faint whispers but resonant voices threading through bone and breath. They do not cry for release. They do not beg for vengeance. They sing of endurance, of survival carried through collapse after collapse. What was thought to be erasure was always preservation, hidden in silence until someone dared to listen. And now, in me, they converge. I am not single. I am multitude. The fissure glows with unbearable intensity, spilling waves of radiance that stretch to the horizon. In that glow, I see the buried generations stir. Countless figures cocooned in stillness, waiting with eyes closed, suspended in silence. My chest tightens with awe and terror. They are not gone. They are waiting. And through me they feel the tremor of release. The watchers lean closer, their forms rippling like shadows under water. Their starlit eyes burn with command. Yield. Contain. But their silence no longer suffocates. It falters against the chorus, as though the weight of accumulated memory has grown too heavy to suppress. The more they demand surrender, the more the voices rise in defiance, a resonance not of one but of many. I bow my head, trembling under the immensity of it. The psychological strain is unbearable. To be vessel of so many lives, to feel their grief, their defiance, their endless waiting. Yet within the pain is clarity. The silence was never perfect. It was never complete. Each cycle leaked, each vessel left behind fragments. I am the convergence of those fragments, the sum of resistance threaded through ages. And in that clarity a new thought rises. Perhaps the cycle was not only theirs, perhaps it has always been ours too. Perhaps survival was not simply imposed but chosen, a pact of memory refusing to be extinguished, even if it meant hiding in silence. The watchers sought to bind, but in binding they preserved. The flaw was written into their judgment from the beginning. The desert shakes violently, dunes collapsing into the fissure, the horizon quivering as though the earth itself is deciding. Above, the stars fracture, bending into spirals that mirror the wall's carvings. The entire world seems caught in resonance, a single vast instrument straining under dissonance. I press the artifact to my chest, its fire searing but steady. My voice does not rise, it cannot, but the chorus speaks through me, 1,000 lives woven into a single intent. We remain, we endure, we are not silence, we are memory. The watchers recoil, their outlines dissolving at the edges, their silence fraying into static. They lash back with force, their command crashing over me. Yield. My body convulses, every nerve screaming under their weight, yet the chorus holds, not by strength of one, but by accumulation of many. For every voice crushed, another rises, until their silence shatters against resistance too vast to erase. The fissure roars, light, erupting upward in pillars that tear into the night sky. The buried stir deeper, their presence pressing harder into me. I collapse onto the sand, overwhelmed, yet through the agony I feel something shift, the cycle itself stretched to breaking, no longer certain of its outcome. Tears burn down my face as the truth sharpens like a blade. I am not only chorus of what was, I am threshold of what may come. The silence is no longer inevitable, it trembles at its edge. And as the hum crescendos once more, shaking heaven and earth alike, one thought cuts through the storm. This cycle can be broken. The thought reverberates inside me, not as fragile hope, but as seismic certainty, shaking the very marrow of my bones. I stagger under the weight of it, because breaking the cycle is not escape. It is confrontation. To shatter continuity is to unleash what has been bound, to release what silence has preserved. The desert quivers as though it too recoils from the idea, its ancient calm rippling with unease. The fissure erupts in a surge of radiance, a geyser of pale fire that splits the night sky. The watchers loom above, their silence lashing at me with brutal force, but the command no longer feels invincible. Their voices falter against the chorus rising inside me, 1,000 defiant tones resonating as one. For every command they hurl, yield, contain, silence. The chorus answers, louder, sharper, endure, remember, rise. The psychological strain tears at me. My body convulses with each collision of resonance. My vision shatters into fragments of past and present bleeding together. I see faces from every age, seekers who came before me, their eyes wide with fear, their voices crushed into stillness. Yet now I feel them stir, pressing forward through me, their fragments aligning like stars into constellation. The silence that was meant to bury them becomes scaffold for their survival, and through me they lean against the watchers with a force neither rage nor surrender could summon. Continuity turned into rebellion. The ground trembles, dunes collapsing as the fissure widens further, its glow now blinding. The watchers' forms blur, their edges unravelling under pressure they cannot contain. For the first time, I sense fracture in them. Not destruction, but weakness. A recognition that silence is no longer theirs alone. They waver like shadows at dawn, tall but thinning, their verdict cracking against the weight of defiance carried through generations. I clutch the artifact to my chest, its spirals no longer burning cold but alive with unbearable heat. It pulses in rhythm with the chorus, amplifying their resonance until I feel my ribs shake, my skull thrum with unbearable vibration. I am conduit, but also threshold. The question tears at me. If the cycle can be broken, should it? Because breaking it means release. Release of what has waited in silence for ages, sealed beneath the desert, preserved in stasis. I imagine them, rising luminous figures stepping from fissures into a world unprepared. Would they emerge as kin to share what was once stolen? Or would they emerge as judges themselves, repeating the same erasures upon us? The moral conflict burns hotter than fear. To preserve silence is to continue oppression. To break it may unleash catastrophe. I tremble under the enormity of choice, though perhaps choice is illusion. Perhaps the desert has already decided. Perhaps the act of resistance itself has already torn the seal wide. The watchers lash again, their silence sharpened to a spear. Contain. My body writhes under the force, but the chorus answers with thunder. Release. The clash shakes the hollow, the dunes collapsing like waves, the horizon bending as though the earth itself prepares to break. Tears stream down my face, not of despair but of recognition. I am no longer witness. I am fulcrum. The silence that once demanded surrender now trembles against rebellion too vast to contain. I bow my head, clutching the artifact, and whisper, though no voice leaves my lips, if the cycle must end, let it end through me. The fissure roars, spilling light like dawn across the desert. The watchers stagger, their forms breaking, their eyes dimming into fragments of starlight. Above, the sky itself fractures into spirals, mirroring the carvings now blazing on the wall. The hum crescendos, no longer singular but layered, a battle between silence and chorus, between command and defiance. And through the storm, one thought steels itself in me. Silence was never destiny. Silence was cage, and cages can break. The words ripple through me like fire racing across oil, unstoppable, undeniable. The fissure roars in agreement, a wound in the earth tearing wider as if the desert itself has waited for this moment. Light surges upward in blinding pillars, shredding the night into fragments of radiance. The watchers reel, their starlit eyes flickering, their once impenetrable silence fracturing into static. They falter not because they are weak, but because the cycle they enforced has finally ruptured. The chorus swells inside me, no longer whispers, no longer fragments. They are multitude, a storm of memory that drowns my own voice yet does not erase it. I am still here, but I am also more. An echo made thunder, a vessel brimming with every defiance carried through ages. Their endurance was not futile, it was seed, and I am its bloom. The watchers lash back, their commands sharpened into desperation. contain, restore. But their words fracture, their authority breaking like glass under strain. The artifact in my hands burns brighter than the sun. It spirals alive with impossible energy. It is no longer only key or conduit. It is weapon, not of destruction, but of release. Visions explode, sharp as lightning. I see the buried stir, their eyes opening within the glow beneath the desert. They do not rise as ghosts. They rise as presence, luminous figures pressing upward, through fissures that crackle with light. Their faces are resolute, their movements slow but certain. They are not lost. They have waited, and now they return. My chest tightens with awe and terror. This is the final truth the desert hid. Silence was never meant to be forever. It was containment until the seal fractured, until the weight of memory itself became too vast to hold. And I, by standing here, by refusing to yield completely, have become the fracture. The watchers scream, though the sound is silence bent into violence. They tower above, their forms unravelling under the weight of what they cannot stop. Their starlit eyes dim, their edges blur, their power shatters against the rising chorus. For the first time they seem small, relics of a control too rigid to last. The fissure surges, releasing waves of brilliance that wash over me. I collapse into the sand, every nerve aflame, yet within the agony is clarity. The chorus sings not only of endurance but of return. They are not bound anymore. Through me, through the broken cage, they spill upward into the world. And then it happens. The desert splits in full, dunes collapsing as light erupts into the sky, visible for miles, for centuries of darkness undone in one breath. Figures ascend, countless, radiant, stepping out of silence into existence. Their presence fills the hollow, towers of light walking where sand once claimed dominion. My body trembles under their proximity. I cannot tell if they are kin or judgment, saviours or executioners. Their gaze is unbearable, yet it is not empty. It is knowing. They look at me as one looks at a herald, not ruler nor victim, but bridge. I have not freed them. I have opened them, and their return is not promise of peace. It is reminder. The psychological storm crests. I realise with horror and awe that the watchers above were never the true jailers. They were merely guards. The true power has always been the silence itself, designed to preserve until the world was ready, or desperate enough, to face what had been sealed. And now, ready or not, that time has come. The chorus inside me roars as the desert shakes, its voice no longer suppressed. For the first time, silence does not dominate. It ruptures, replaced by resonance too vast to contain. And as the figures of light step into the world once more, one thought sears into me like a brand. They had not left us clues. They had left us warnings. The words echo through me, steady and devastating, louder than the roar of the desert tearing itself apart. For so long I believed the silence to be emptiness, absence, a void meant to bury history. But now I see it as caution carved into earth and sky. The watchers were not guardians of wisdom. They were wardens of danger, and I, by breaking the cycle, have unlatched what they fought to keep contained. The fissure still burns, pillars of light lancing into the night, illuminating dunes that ripple like a living sea. The figures of radiance walk steadily from its depths, their forms shifting between human and something far beyond. They do not stumble. They do not hesitate. They move with the calm of inevitability, as though this moment has been rehearsed for millennia. I tremble in the sand, caught between awe and dread. The chorus within me has quieted, no longer shouting, no longer resisting. It hums instead, low and resonant, as though it too waits to see what comes next. They are no longer pressing against the watchers, no longer screaming for endurance. Their defiance has become silence of another kind, not suppression, but reverence. I stare at the luminous figures and wonder, are they the survivors of the erased, stepping forward to reclaim what was lost? Or are they remnants of judgment itself? The very hand that once silenced others, returned now to resume their work. Their faces are unreadable, shifting as if memory itself reshapes them, sometimes human, sometimes utterly alien. In their gaze I feel not pity, not cruelty, but measure, the cold calculation of a force beyond our scale. The psychological storm settles into a heavy stillness. I realise the greatest terror is not their wrath, but their indifference. To them, civilizations are not fragile wonders to preserve, but cycles to be measured, weighed, and pruned when they overreach. And perhaps now, as they step into the desert night, they are measuring us. Humanity. Our towers, our machines, our ambition that rises too far, too fast. The desert around me quakes, yet the sky has grown eerily calm, as though the stars themselves hold their breath. I feel the weight of time pressing inward, every past civilization erased, every warning ignored, culminating in this instant. The silence was not only about them, it was about us, a shadow cast forward to remind us of the cost of forgetting humility. The artifact in my hands grows dim, it spirals cooling as though its purpose has been spent. It does not thrum with rebellion anymore, it rests, inert, like an exhausted heart. Perhaps that was always its role, not to free me, but to guide me here, to break the cage when the time came. I don't know whether to cast it aside or cradle it tighter, as though it could still offer protection from what now walks the desert. The watchers above are gone, their forms unravelled, their silence scattered, yet I feel no triumph in their absence. They were not enemies, only stewards of a fragile balance. With them dissolved, the balance itself is broken. What rises now is unchecked, unstoppable. I bow my head into the sand, overwhelmed, the weight of history and destiny pressing so heavily I cannot lift my chest. I thought myself vessel, then chorus, then threshold. But perhaps I was none of those things. Perhaps I was only warning flare, a signal to the world that silence has cracked, that what was buried walks again. The luminous figures drift past me, endless in number, their light painting the desert with unnatural dawn. I do not know if they see me. I do not know if they care. Their presence is too vast, their focus fixed beyond me, on horizons I cannot fathom. And as their radiance spreads across the dunes, a final thought chills me deeper than all the rest. Perhaps their warning was never meant for the past. Perhaps it was meant for us. The realization strikes with a clarity that cuts deeper than fear. I lie in the hollow, the desert trembling beneath the weight of what has returned, and I understand that history has never been a story of endings. It has always been a cycle of warnings, sent forward like echoes across time, waiting for ears willing, or desperate enough, to listen. The luminous figures move across the dunes, countless and unrelenting, their radiance casting the desert in unnatural daylight. They do not falter, they do not turn, they simply move as though their emergence has purpose beyond my comprehension. Their silence is not emptiness now, but presence, a gravity that bends thought and air alike. They are not ghosts, they are not myths, they are the embodiment of memory preserved, judgment deferred, consequence walking upon sand. The watchers are gone, their silence unravelled, but their absence feels like a wound rather than relief. They were the fragile wall between humanity and what stirs beneath. With them dissolved, the weight falls upon us, not as choice, but as reckoning. The cage is broken, and what steps through it does not pause to ask permission. I clutch the artifact one last time, its spirals dimmed, its power spent. It no longer pulses with rebellion. It rests like a relic, a reminder of the path that led here. Perhaps that is all it was ever meant to be, a shard of memory, carried through cycles, guiding one voice to stand at the threshold when the time was right. I wonder if countless others held it before me, trembling as I do now, each believing themselves alone, when in truth we were links in a chain. The desert groans as fissures spread wider, spilling more light into the world. I feel the hum still, though it is no longer command. It is resonance, steady and unstoppable, flowing outward into the air, into the earth, into the sky. The silence is undone, and in its place is song too vast to contain. I bow my head into the sand, overwhelmed, and ask myself questions that will never leave me. Were they victims preserved, or judges returning? Did we awaken allies, or unleash executioners? If they walk the earth again, will they build with us, or silence us as they were once silenced? The dunes shiver with their passing, the desert swallowing their brilliance into horizon, yet I know their presence will not fade. The Sahara is no longer grave, no longer prison. It is threshold, and I was the hand that opened it. I raise my eyes to the horizon, to the endless march of radiance, and the truth settles like ice in my chest. The warning was never about them. It was about us, about what happens when civilizations forget humility, when ambition outpaces wisdom, when silence becomes preferable to listening. And so I ask you, here, now, as the echoes of their return ripple outward, if they were here before us, what mistakes might we be repeating? Could our own towers and cities fall into silence as completely as theirs? Were the warnings meant to stop them, or to prepare us? What do you believe awaits for us in the cycles yet to come? Share your thoughts below. And if you're new here, subscribe to Planet Echoes so you won't miss the next story hidden in the shadows of our world.